What's up YouTube? Fred here. In today's video, I'm going to cover why the 2021 BMW M3 and M4 are actually great looking cars and why automotive media is wrong about them. Yeah, kind of controversial. So let's get into it. If you're new to the channel, I'm Fred. I do car and motorcycle stuff and I have new videos every single Friday, so please consider subscribing. Alright, on to today's video. Alright, so real quick, I just want to go over a couple of the specs just to get that out of the way. The 2021 BMW M3 and M4, the base M3 and M4, they come with 480 horsepower and 405 pound-feet of torque. The competition model of each of those, the M3 and the M4, they come with 510 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque. One of the best parts is that you can get a manual transmission. However, you cannot get that in the competition model, which instead uses an 8-speed automatic, which I've heard is lightning fast, so just something to consider. Each of the cars is powered by a 3-liter twin-turbo inline-6, which harkens back to BMWs of long ago, and from everything I've heard, sounds really good. 0 to 60 times are 4.2 seconds, which is pretty quick. And it's an improvement, I believe, a tenth of a second over the previous version of the M3. Alright, so let's get right into it. Here's what all the fuss is about. Behold, the 2021 BMW M3 and M4. Now, if you aren't a car enthusiast, you may be wondering, what is all the fuss about? And specifically, it's the grille over this car. Here are a couple headlines from the last week about the car. Apparently, BMW fans are in an uproar over the design. I know that on my own Facebook, I've seen several friends lamenting these looks, claiming that BMW's lost its way, saying that they hate the car, and I feel that's a little bit unfounded. And all of this is over the grille. It's not the rest of the car. The overall styling people seem to agree with. It's that grille. And yes, it's a big grille, and yes, it's different than before, but is that a bad thing? I think people are overreacting a little bit, and there's a pretty good explanation as to why. I want you to put on a lab coat for a second and think about psychology. And there's a very simple principle that I want to cover which helps really explain why people are so viscerally reacting to the look of these cars. And what is that principle? It's people don't like change. It's very simple. People don't like change. And I know that sounds a little bit kind of drastically oversimplifying, but let me use an example with the C7. So you may be wondering, if I'm doing a video about the BMW M3, why am I talking about the Corvette? Well, there's a very simple answer to that, and that is right here. So you may not remember, but when the C7 Corvette came out, it was 2014. Everybody had been used to the C6s and all the generations that came before that. And going to a non-round taillight was seen as blasphemy. Oh, the designers have gone crazy, and oh, it's a plastic Corvette. They clearly don't know what us as enthusiasts want. We want the same, but newer, but don't change anything. So the C7 now has been out. It's not a brand new car anymore. It's even, heck, been replaced by the C8. But what you'll find is that a lot of people now, when you ask them, oh man, the C7, one of the best looking generations. Oh, it looks great. Every time I see one, it turns my head. Well, it's kind of interesting because if you were to go back to forums and you're going to go back to all the enthusiast web pages where people were talking about the C7 once it was unveiled, but before it came out, or even once it was, the first year or two, you'll see all sorts of comments by people. Oh, it's ugly. I can't stand it. I don't like the changes that they made. But now those same people are saying that it's beautiful, and I have to agree. I think the car looks fantastic, and you can't have progress without change. So something to consider. So let me give you a couple other examples of what I mean by that. Air-cooled Porsches, liquid-cooled Porsches, manual transmission, double clutch or automatic transmission, front-engine Corvette, mid-engine Corvette. All of those things, when they came out, were revolutionary. So with all of those, the common thread is that people didn't like change. And one of the overall trends that I've noticed is if you look at forums and you look at groups of people who are into these cars, they have an emotional attachment. Hey, I bought this thing and I like how it looks, and now they're changing it and they don't know what they're doing, and they feel a little bit betrayed. They feel like, well, the thing I have is still great. Well, and it is. And that's the funny part. That's just how our brains operate. It is safe and it is a known quantity to go with something you know. Well, you can't have progress without change. Even if you don't agree with the looks of these cars, they're destined to become future classics. Objectively, they're going to be great driver's cars, and here are a few reasons why this is a return to form for BMW. So the first reason is that you can get them in a manual transmission. As any car enthusiast knows, a lot of manufacturers have stopped making manual transmissions. BMW says, not us. We're going to continue. As long as there's demand, they're going to keep making manual cars as long as they possibly can. So one of the great parts is that you can actually get the M3 and the M4 as a manual. Of course, the competition models, you can only get the 8-speed automatic. This is similar to how Porsche makes the RS line of their GT cars, PDK only. You can get the manual in the regular Porsche 911 GT3, but as soon as you go to the RS, you get the PDK because you're more concerned with outright lap times. I think that's probably the approach they're taking with the competition. That is the car that if you want to set lap times, that's the car to get. However, if you're like me and spend a lot of your time driving on back roads and going out to have fun in your car, seriously consider the manual. It's going to be a good option. All right, so the second reason is that the inline six, which is a twin turbo, actually sounds good this time. If you recall the last generation of M3 and M4, they sound very blah. They sound like, I've heard it described as throwing gravel in a cement mixer. I've heard it as a bag of hammers falling down a set of stairs. They don't sound great. I don't think they sound awful, but I certainly don't think it's as melodious as when they had the V8 or some of the earlier 6s. And so this is a nice return to form for the M3 and the M4. It had a lot of power, but it just didn't, the sound didn't back it up. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to cover is ultimate driving machine. So that mindset of ultimate driving machine, really it began with the 2002, which was kind of a breakout for its time. It wasn't the fastest car. It certainly wasn't the best looking, but it was lighter than everything else out there. And then they put a little bit more powerful motor in it. And that car ended up kind of upending the small sports sedan segment, which didn't exist at the time. And people were like, wow, this is an amazing car. Fast forward a little bit, and they built the E30 M3. Now, that car really can be described as the ultimate driving machine. It was tactile, it was visceral, and really, like, that's what kind of prompted the mantra of ultimate driving machine. So more recently, though, if you look at what the automotive press is saying, a lot of the M cars have sort of strayed from that ultimate driving. Sure, they're fast. You can go great in a fast line, but they're pretty easily beaten by cars that are sometimes a lot less money. Fairly recently with the Camaro SS 1LE, which was not supercharged, it wasn't the 650 horsepower car, the regular SS 1LE was described as what BMW could have been for a comparable M3 competition, which is unfortunate because BMW does make great cars. They're well made, they're fast, they're fun to drive, they look good, but they sort of had strayed away and become more of like Grand Tours, and they dulled some of the senses and some of that immediacy that you're looking for in a real driver's car. Now, certainly, they're trying to take that branding and spread it across their whole line, but really, is a compact crossover, is that really the ultimate driving machine? But there's a glimmer of hope. In 2017, BMW came out with the M2, and then followed a couple years later by the M2 Competition. The M2 and the M2 Competition reminded everybody what BMW became famous for. That tells you that BMW is listening and they're saying, hey, you know what? People are liking some of this newer stuff we're making. Let's be a little more bold. Let's step out of our comfort zone. So I think that's good. I think that the ultimate driving machine, if they're going to use that as a mantra, that has to become part of what those cars are about. There's a fairly famous saying, and it's something along the lines of, you can't be revolutionary by playing it safe. No one who ever affected real change did it by following all the rules. And I think that's what BMW is doing here. For years, they've had cars where the lines are becoming a little less edgy and they're going a little bit smoother and they're softening things up. And then when that M2 came out, the M2 Competition, the M5 came out, they have started to realize, wait a second, maybe we can have both. We can make the kind of everyday cars that people buy to commute in and to do their daily lives. But we can also have these really fun cars that are a little bit out of the box, a little bit more on edge. So I saw the spy photos when they came out. I heard the rumors on the internet. And rather than form a judgment then or taking that grain of salt that everybody has said, like, you're not going to like this, instead I thought, well, hey, this is refreshing. BMW is doing something a little bit different. I'm going to pay attention to that. And so now seeing the cars, and especially seeing them on video, and I can't wait to see them in person, I think people are going to be surprised. And I would bet you that a lot of the people that are saying that they don't like the cars now, from the press photos, from the staged photography, from the advertisements, and even maybe from some of the YouTube videos, I bet when they see it in person, their opinion is going to change. Fast forward, 5 years, How are people going to think about it then? Keep in mind, when the V10 M5 came out, a lot of people were like, oh, this is the worst looking car. That styling is terrible.
Oh.
But look how that's aged. Now that car, I don't know, it's about 10 years old, and now people love them. They think they're great. When you find a mint one, and it's been restored, and it's had all the bearing work done on the engine, and it runs awesome, that is one of the best driver's cars out there. And at the time, people are like, oh, this is ugly, and now it's sought after. So I think collective conscious has a little bit of a short memory, so I attribute a lot of that to it. So, mark my words, these are going to be future classic cars. I think they look fantastic. I think they are a breath of fresh air. I hope Audi and some of the other brands actually try something like that. Go a little more out of your comfort zone. And I applaud BMW for trying something a little different. I, for one, can't wait to go see one. I can't wait to go test drive one. And who knows, maybe I'll end up getting one at some point. So, on that note, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed and you like this video, please consider subscribing. And until next time, Fred out.